This presentation is basically a timeline covering Epstein and his syndicate throughout his life, up to his death, and the discussion around the closing of the case today, the cover-up, and the protection of other people involved. Disclaimer, so maybe a few less people get mad at me. I helped campaign for the RFK Jr. campaign. When he dropped out, I started supporting Trump and working to gain votes and money for his campaign. This is not a call to release any evidence that could harm victims, such as photos or videos. Nobody wants that. Pam Bondi seemed to imply the other day that she thought that's what people wanted. No, we want other people involved to go down. And the point is that there is an ongoing operation, a network of sex traffickers, blackmailers, and pedophiles who did not magically stop just because Epstein died. These groups often have a scapegoat figure, like Epstein. I'm not making an argument against his death being a suicide. As of now, it cannot be determined either way. But I will say the prison tape is terrible. It's terrible. It's blurry. It is not a good angle, really, of everything that could be going on. But either way, whether he killed himself or not, at this point, is really irrelevant in the discussion of, are these types of people still active and operating? I'm conservative, pro-Israel, typically support everything the Trump administration has been doing, but this is a different matter. This next slide is a couple clips from Ben Shapiro's show the other day. His take was that you're either in the Alex Jones camp of full-blown conspiracy theory, lizard people rule the world, or you believe everything that the government puts out. And he says those are the only two choices. I have to disagree. And why Ben Shapiro went this route on this particular case, on this story, I don't know. But here we go.
You may not come to that same conclusion, but now you should be forced to provide your evidence before you call people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and by the way, the President of the United States, liars on this matter. Because those are your only two choices here. Either Alex Jones, as is usual, blew a conspiracy theory out of proportion, and so did the rest of the internet, or Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Donald Trump are all lying to you. Those are your choices. There is no third choice.
I mean, that's crazy. Those are your only two choices. I would have to disagree with that wholeheartedly. Bill O'Reilly, a former Fox host, said he had a conversation with President Donald Trump earlier this year, 2025, about the Jeffrey Epstein files, which the president said could destroy innocent people. My point is that they're not all innocent. On July 10th, 2025, O'Reilly said he had spoken with Trump man-to-man, eye-to-eye, about the Epstein files on St. Patrick's Day. Quoting O'Reilly, talking about Trump, he said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct, O'Reilly said in the interview. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another, he added. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed because there's not going to be any context. Well, that's what research and investigations are for. We're not saying every single person Jeffrey Epstein ever came into contact with is a sex trafficker or a pedophile. But saying that zero of them are is crazy. Because a few of them definitely are. So, for Ben Shapiro, for Bill O'Reilly, for anyone else who just wants to blindly accept the story as it's told by the government in the last few weeks, here's your context. Between 1974 and 1976, Jeffrey Epstein taught physics and mathematics at the Dalton School in Manhattan, despite lacking formal credentials. He was not qualified to be a teacher. He was dismissed for poor performance, but during this time, he built connections with wealthy families, notably Alan Greenberg of Bear Stearns. Greenberg later brought Epstein into Bear Stearns, where Epstein quickly rose to become a limited partner by 1980. And in 1980, he began his career as a financial advisor. In 81, he founded the Intercontinental Assets Group Incorporated, attracting wealthy international clients and collaborating with Stephen Hoffenberg on corporate rating schemes that led to Hoffenberg's later conviction for a massive Ponzi scheme. Civil lawsuits and victim accounts allege that Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse of girls began as early as 1985, targeting victims as young as 13 years old. These early abuses reportedly took place before his more widely publicized crimes in the 2000s, and these are based on later civil suits and victim accounts. They made claims years later. Just a quick look at his crimes in general before the big bust. At 27 years old, he was penalized for improperly carrying an antique sword in Great Britain. It was during a deposition that Epstein revealed this, almost in a weird bragging way, like he was carrying a sword, which is not that uncommon or that cool in the world of guns. In 85, when he was 32, as mentioned, are the earliest alleged cases of abuses of girls as young as 13 years old. The allegations came years later. I have a feeling that before his first known settlement out of court for one of these cases, that other settlements had been reached, which is messed up. You shouldn't be able to buy off the parents, basically, of these children with a big check because you have that much money. That's not how it should work. In 2005, a 14-year-old girl's family reported Epstein for molestation of their daughter, 14-year-old girl, leading to an investigation. In 2006, at 53 years old, he was charged with solicitation of prostitution related to the 2005 case, and nothing worse. But in 2007, at 54, the next year, he got a non-prosecution agreement for all of his co-conspirators, broad immunity, much like the Biden pardons. Anything you may or may not have done in the last however many years, you will never be charged for. Totally unethical, immoral, bad thing to do in general. This is the way they use their scapegoats. If someone in the group gets caught, they take them down, pin everything on them, and everyone else involved walks away scot-free, and often continues to do what they were doing. And he received a lenient sentence, 13 months in jail, and registered as a sex offender. But the 13 months in jail was more like, you just got to check in with us every once in a while, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Now, in the 90s is when Epstein was really building his network. Between 93 and 2001, Donald Trump's name appeared 7 times in Epstein's flight logs, often with family and Epstein himself. Destinations were not always specified as Little St. James, but the logs confirmed repeated travel with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. May 3rd of 94, flight logs show Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, and Eva Dubin flying with Epstein from Palm Beach to St. Thomas near Little St. James. In 93, Trump traveled on Epstein's plane 4 times. That same year, Epstein was accused of abusing a minor in Palm Beach. The case settled out of court for $100,000. And you don't pay $100,000 in hush money if you're completely innocent. And I have a feeling he did this multiple times before 93. October 11th of 93, Trump, Epstein, Maxwell, Marla Maples, Tiffany Trump, and the nanny, all listed as passengers in the flight logs. From 93 to 2001, Bill Clinton served as the 42nd President of the United States, and he would later become a frequent flyer on Epstein's plane. Between 94 and 97, Trump traveled on Epstein's plane at least once a year. On February 9th, 95, Bill Clinton is recorded as a passenger from Miami to New York. Then, August of 95, Eric Trump at age 11 traveled on Epstein's plane from Palm Beach to New York. March 22nd of 97, Epstein's plane departed Teterboro, New Jersey, with Trump, Maples, Tiffany Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell headed to Palm Beach. This makes at least 7 times that Trump flew with Epstein after he was alleged in abuse cases of minors. March 20th, 98, Les Wexner transferred his Manhattan townhouse to Epstein, later notorious for alleged abuse and elite gatherings. In the late 90s are the beginnings of his royal connections. And I have the 99 UN estimate that 400 million people were trafficked worldwide there, just to make a point that this is a major, widespread problem happening across the world. Epstein and his syndicate are just a very small part of it, but that group is still continuing its operations. In 99, Prince Andrew met Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell and began traveling with him to the U.S. Virgin Islands. February 9th and 27th of 99, Prince Andrew logged as a passenger to St. Thomas, with testimony later placing him on Little St. James, where a lot of the bad stuff is said to have went down. May 12th of 2000, Prince Andrew flew with Epstein from Teterboro to West Palm Beach. And also in 2000, Andrew invited Epstein and Maxwell to a Windsor Castle party, and they were also seen together at Mar-a-Lago. Now we get to the 2000s. 2001, and this one may be irrelevant. Flight logs confirm a diversion to Atlantic City, New Jersey, where Epstein arranged a stop at one of Donald Trump's casinos. Donald Trump was not there or involved. In 2001, flight logs and pilot records show Prince Andrew flew with Epstein and Virginia Giuffre on at least 3 occasions, including trips to the U.S. Virgin Islands and Palm Beach, Florida. From 2001 to 2003, Clinton's total flights with Epstein were at least 26, mostly between 2001 and 2003, with no evidence he visited Epstein's island or Florida home, though he probably did. From February 12th to 21st, 2002, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others traveled with Epstein on a 9-day philanthropic tour of Africa. The trip included stops in Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, Mozambique, South Africa, and a layover in Dubai. Clinton's name appears in the logs for 11 legs of this trip. Kevin Spacey has made several statements saying that he has nothing to do with Epstein, that he is not friends with him, etc., etc. I believe that, but Kevin Spacey himself has faced multiple allegations of sexual misconduct and assault, with some cases leading to criminal charges and civil lawsuits, while others resulted in acquittals or dismissals. And he surely has settled out of court, just like any rich person who can afford to get themselves out of a case do. September 21st, 2002, flight logs show Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker traveling with Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein from Miami to New York, which was the return leg of the Africa trip. March 14th, 2003, flight logs list Naomi Campbell as a passenger on Epstein's plane from Paris to London, with Ghislaine Maxwell present. November 4th, 2003. Did I say 2023? November 4th, 2003. Flight logs show Bill Clinton flying from Brussels to Oslo, then to Hong Kong via Siberia and Beijing for HIV/AIDS work. This is the last known trip Clinton took on Epstein's jet. July 2nd, 2005, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on new sex trafficking charges in Florida. He was released on bail and pleaded not guilty. March 2005 through February 2006, Palm Beach police and later the FBI investigated Epstein after multiple underage victims were identified. Hidden cameras and incriminating evidence were found at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. April 6, 2006, flight logs recorded Prince Andrew, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein flying from St. Thomas to Palm Beach, Florida. And all of this after multiple allegations and settlements out of court and investigations into Epstein. All these people continued to do business with him and travel with him. July 19th, 2006, 2 underage victims, police, and a state investigator testified before a Palm Beach County grand jury about Epstein's abuse. Then, the same year, 2006, Prince Andrew invited Jeffrey Epstein to his daughter Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday party. A known pedophile who has a thing for young girls invites him to his teenage daughter's birthday party. Then we get later into the 2000s, between 2007 and 2010. On June 30th, 2007, Epstein reached a plea deal, pleading guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor, the 13, 14-year-old girl, receiving 13 months in prison. The non-prosecution agreement, NPA, granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators, shielding a broad network of associates, and as I've mentioned, this seems to be their method. Scapegoat goes down, the rest walk free. June 2008, Jeffrey Epstein was sentenced to 13 months after pleading guilty. He served the sentence at the Palm Beach County Stockade in Florida. He was granted a work release, which allowed him to leave the jail for up to 12 hours a day and return to sleep at night. It was basically the entire deal, with 1 day a week where he was actually in prison throughout the entire day. In August of 2008, Epstein was officially registered as a sex offender in Florida as a condition of his plea deal. He was required to check in with law enforcement regularly, and his status was made public in the state's sex offender registry. December 21st, 2008, while he's still doing his 13 months of jail at night, Epstein transferred $46 million to a charitable trust controlled by Les Wexner and his wife, drawing scrutiny from investigators. The YLK Charitable Fund, which is what he sent the money to, is a private foundation established and run by Abigail Wexner, the wife of billionaire Les Wexner. The transfer was not made to the Wexner Foundation itself, but specifically to the YLK Charitable Fund, which was formed in December 2007 with legal counsel. So only a year before the money was transferred. And this is after he's already been accused and going through the court system over this case. So the YLK Charitable Fund was created during that, and then the money was transferred, the $46 million, while Epstein was in jail for 13 months. Les Wexner later stated that these payments represented a portion of the funds Epstein had misappropriated from the Wexner family during his years as their financial manager. The transfer was described as a partial repayment, not a donation or philanthropic gift. If it was repayment, why was it sent through the YLK Charitable Fund? Very weird, very weird. July 2009, Epstein was released from prison and relocated to Little St. James. December 2010, Prince Andrew, traveled to New York to meet Epstein, allegedly to end their friendship. But evidence showed continued contact and visits to Epstein's Manhattan mansion, likely the island. And you don't fly to meet someone in person who is a known child molester. You don't fly to meet them in person to end the friendship. You just never talk to them again. The dots are not that hard to connect. Come on. Now the years leading up to his final bust. In 2015, Epstein accused again of sex trafficking in New York. He was arrested and charged. His black book surfaced, naming many high-profile figures, including criminals like Bill Cosby, Epstein's neighbor. Bill Cosby faced criminal charges related to sexual assault, specifically involving Andrea Constand. He was initially convicted in 2018 of aggravated indecent assault for drugging and assaulting Constand at his Pennsylvania home in 2004, later overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Cosby was accused by over 60 women of rape, drug-facilitated sexual assault, sexual battery, child sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. Now, I'm not going to argue that some of these women, both with Cosby, with Epstein, with Trump, are lying, and either nothing happened and they're just trying to get money, or it was consensual and they're now just trying to get money. But I think half or more are probably telling the truth. On July 6th of 2019, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport on sex trafficking and conspiracy charges. Then in August of 2019, legal documents surfaced with new allegations against Prince Andrew, which Buckingham Palace denied, and which Prince Andrew has continued to deny. August 10th of 2019, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell, ruled a suicide by hanging. Buckingham Palace stated Andrew was appalled by the reports of Epstein's crimes. Now, this is just a quick look at businesses, companies that Epstein was involved with, and this is not comprehensive. There are more. But Bear Stearns, where he started his finance career, Intercontinental Assets Group, which he founded, Towers Financial Corporation, which was a Ponzi scheme where he worked as a consultant and advisor. The J. Epstein and Company, founder and owner, managed billionaire assets, financial trust company, offshore into the U.S. Virgin Islands, probably money laundering, and who knows what else. Then it goes on, Liquid Funding Limited, Little James, Great St. James, Radar Magazine, Jeffrey Epstein the Sixth Foundation, Valar Ventures, and his dealings with Leon Black. Since Epstein's death, there have been constant arguments on whether he committed suicide or not. On Joe Rogan's podcast, years after the event, Kash Patel emphasized that he and Deputy Director Dan Bongino had reviewed all available information and insisted that there is no credible evidence of murder. He pushed back on the idea that he or anyone at the FBI would hide information about Epstein's crimes or protect guilty parties, saying, "Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we have evidence to prosecute people on?" And that is what I think at this point. Joe Rogan did try to push back about the doctor's findings that said that Epstein's death was more consistent with homicide rather than suicide, but Patel basically waved those off and doubled down on his position that the official evidence supports suicide. And I'm not really here to argue with that. For the most part, jails and prisons are secure. Otherwise, people would be escaping every single day. So I would say the evidence leans in the direction that, yeah, he committed suicide. Why? We'll never know. So on jails being secure, Patel argued that there was no way someone could have accessed Epstein's cell to murder him without being caught on camera or seen by guards. He acknowledged that guards sometimes doze off, but insisted no one can get into the cell. If they had, we would see it. When Rogan pressed about reports of cameras being down, Patel replied, "I don't know who said that. We're giving you all the footage we have." And I haven't looked much into the missing minute. Of course, there's going to be reset times, especially if you're using tapes and not digital footage. It is what it is. He explained that as a former public defender, he had spent time in jails and understood how suicide could happen in those environments. He said, based on public information and the pictures of him hanging himself, that guy killed himself. So, like I said, not here to argue with that. July 7th of this year, the Department of Justice and FBI, under Patel's leadership, released a memo stating that there was no incriminating client list, no evidence of a blackmail ring, and that Epstein died by suicide. 2 out of 3 of those things are for sure a lie. The memo also confirmed that no further charges would be brought against any uncharged third parties. That is a major red flag. As my note says, no different than Biden pre-pardoning people for years back for any crime they may or may not have committed. That is not okay. If the truth of the matter that this operation was bigger than Epstein and is ongoing, if that wasn't so obvious, I would probably go along with everything Kash Patel is saying, because before all of this, he was criticizing the FBI and government gangsters for covering up the Epstein case, repeatedly demanding the release of the so-called Black Book and client list. Then, in May, during a Senate hearing, Patel was directly asked whether he believed Epstein was murdered. He responded, I believe he hung himself in his cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center. So he's not really changed his stance on whether or not it was a suicide. So that's another reason I would say that is probably the case, because they've been saying that from the beginning. Nothing's changed there. No new evidence has come out saying that it was a murder. So suicide does seem most likely. But the problem is that he has now walked back on everything he claimed to set out to do. Not everything, but in this matter particularly, he's backtracked on it. Him, Pam Bondi, all of it. So moving on to 2020 to 2025, more recent times after Epstein's death. January of 2020, U.S. Prosecutor Jeffrey Berman stated Prince Andrew had provided zero cooperation in the Epstein investigation. If he truly was appalled at Epstein's actions and was never involved himself, had no idea that any of this was going on, why was it so hard for him to cooperate? June 23rd, 2021, John McAfee found dead in a Spanish prison, ruled a suicide, with many doubting the official story, echoing Epstein's suspicious death. That is completely unrelated as far as I know, but I thought it was an interesting thing to throw in there. December 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell found guilty on 5 of 6 counts for recruiting and grooming girls for Epstein. Now, you don't have a personal assistant recruiting and grooming girls for just you. That just is an outlandish claim. June 28th, 2022, Maxwell sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Much more than Epstein ever got before. October 18th, 2023, U.S. Virgin Islands settled with J.P. Morgan Chase for $105 million over the bank's alleged role in enabling Epstein's operation. Once again, an operation that big, that level of money laundering and strange payments going out, is more than just one person. January 4, 2024, the court unsealed documents from Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit naming Andrew, Clinton, Dershowitz, and others as Epstein associates, which was already obvious. March 14th, 2024, federal judge ordered release of thousands of pages, or over 1,000 pages of Epstein evidence, revealing new names and confirming visits to Epstein's island by prominent business and academic figures. Then September 2024, Sean Diddy Combs is arrested on racketeering and sex trafficking charges, echoing the Epstein scandal. Scapegoat goes down, everyone else, for the most part, left untouched. Now, this clip from first, February 26, 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi claimed on Fox News that the Epstein client list was sitting on my desk right now, promising imminent release. So at a press conference earlier in the day, and Michael Knowles, in a clip I'll show in just a little bit, goes over this point. She was asked specifically about the Epstein client list, not files in general, and she answered, "It is on my desk." So Michael Knowles caught that. I hadn't really thought about that, but she knew what was being talked about. She did not misunderstand or misspeak. She knew what she was talking about. There was a list of some sort that she had on her desk, unless that was a lie to begin with. This clip is from later that same day.
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have, well over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well, we'll
along
look
with
for
his
that.
co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help. That's for
He
sure.
sure did.
Now, we got the flight logs, we got a lot of names, and they did nothing with it. I mean, the connections are there. February 27th, next day, DOJ released the first phase of declassified Epstein files. Binders given to conservative influencers contained mostly previously public documents, and no client list was included. March 20, 2025, Bondi, under pressure, pressed the FBI for more releases, promising the people of America further disclosures. Then, April of 2025, Bondi was caught on hidden camera, claimed tens of thousands of videos existed and were under FBI review. Also, I'd like to mention, in the clip I just played, she says over 200 victims. Later, we hear there were only dozens of victims. And if I'm not mistaken, the most recent thing is over 1,000 victims. Now that is not the work of one person. I don't care who you are, how big of a pedophile you are. That is the work of a syndicate, of an operation of people doing these things, abusing these people. May 1st, 2025, the White House stated there was no specific timeline for further releases. Then, 8 days later, FBI Director Kash Patel in a Senate hearing claimed, "I believe he hung himself in his cell," which we've already covered. June 2025, Patel received a letter from House Democrats demanding all Epstein files, especially those referencing Trump. The FBI said the review was ongoing. And I hate to say it because I've supported Trump in his new administration, maybe not the first time around so much, but I think that is the reason. I think that is the reason. Because he's in there. June 5th, 2025, Elon Musk accused the Trump administration of hiding Epstein documents because Trump was allegedly implicated. June 7th, 2025, Musk deleted his post linking Trump to the unreleased files. July 6th, 2025, Musk denounced the DOJ findings, calling the lack of a client list the final straw, and launched his new party, the America Party. Not to be confused with the American Party, which has existed for some time. July 7th, 2025, DOJ released a memo stating there is no incriminating client list, reaffirming Epstein's death as a suicide, and ending further charges. That is the main thing, ending further charges and closing down the investigation like everything's figured out. The White House clarified Bondi's prior statements as referring to general paperwork, not a specific list. This is just the other day.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the death?
Yeah, sure. If
Hey,
I
Pam,
could,
could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
As you can see, the president wants this dropped completely, for whatever reason. It may have nothing to do with his own involvement with Epstein. It may have to do with people he's close to or needs for the moment. There's a very small chance that they're being honest and that everyone else involved is innocent, but that just is so unlikely. It's really ridiculous to think that. There are definitely more involved. And it could be, I don't know anything about the Epstein possibly being a member of an intelligence agency or the intelligence community. And that could be, very well could be a reason for covering this stuff up. But the American people want the truth, period. The cover-ups are just, the time for the cover-ups is over. Next clip is Sagar and Jetty with Tucker Carlson making basically the main point.
Yes.
And then yesterday, she's saying there's no client list.
There's no client list. And there was no systematic blackmail. That actually might be the most preposterous line in the document.
The whole thing that this tape shows that he didn't kill himself is like a joke. But worse than that, it's a joke that we all get. Like, they're not fooling anybody. So I feel like we're at a dangerous point now.
Yeah, I agree, because the lie is more it's not, the lie at this point is not even part of trying to convince any of this is true.
Yes.
The lie is a signal to everybody else involved in the scheme that to the ultimate ends, the United States government will go to protect all of you.
Yes.
And that's the for
Man,
what
is that smart.
purpose?
Can you say that again? Okay,
Yes.
so I'm sorry, it's a signal.
The lie is not for you and me. The lie is for those implicated to say, no matter what, we will protect you. And then we have to start asking the question, why?
Now we get to Michael Knowles' clips that I think also make some very good points.
You say, well, okay, maybe there's not like a list like typed out on a single page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but people are in the files. Who are the people? But furthermore, what she said in that interview was, she was asked verbatim, here's the line, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she responded, it's sitting on my desk right now. I'll repeat that. The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? It's sitting on my desk right now. It's, in that sentence, can only refer to the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Now, she might be saying here or insinuating that she misspoke. Okay, maybe she meant to say one thing, but she said another. But even to say, well, I was referring to the files. No, if you were referring to the files, you would say, they are on my desk right now. Files is plural. The list is singular. No, they're just not going to release it. And I never expected them to release it. I never expected Democrats to release it or Republicans to release it.
That's a good point, too. There are people from both sides that were deeply involved with Epstein. So he's right. No matter which side would have won the election, no matter who was appointed to these positions, the list was probably never going to be released. The next day, Michael Knowles had this to say.
We got to move on from Epstein. It's over. We're never going to. It's totally fine. Epstein had no clients. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for trafficking underage girls to no one. He was definitely not blackmailing anyone. He had cameras on every square inch of his widespread properties, but he was not blackmailing anyone. There were hours and hours of tapes of no one. We got to move on. Okay, one last little cherry on top of the evidence sundae here. This is a great email from Ken Klippenstein, I think it is, journalist here, who writes to the FBI to get comment on a new report. This is a report that comes from the DOJ. Previously, we were told that Epstein had about a dozen underage victims, or about a dozen victims of his sex trafficking ring. Now we are told there were 1,000 victims. Pretty big delta, wouldn't you say? A dozen? Okay. You might just be a weird pervert with a dozen.
Number of victims.
1,000?
I mean, yeah, that's another great point. I think I already made that the amount of material, the number of victims are more than one person could ever commit. Megyn Kelly has made about the same point on her channel and podcast. She said they release a memo saying, "You're not getting anything. It's over. Just trust us." She went on to explain that this wasn't just about shutting down public curiosity, but about broadcasting to the guilty that the government is closing ranks around them. The abrupt ending, she noted, was an obvious attempt to deflect and to set the messaging like, we're not talking about Epstein anymore, period. But the real audience was those who had a reason to worry about what might come out. So it's like Enjetti said, it's a signal. It's not about the truth It's not about satisfying the public. It's about telling everyone involved, we have your back, no matter what. Now, if you want to pause it, this is just a very basic list of the evidence. You can find a more complete list of evidence on the DOJ site. But some of the things I'd rather not go into detail about what they are, like some of the sex toys and things like that, and the costumes. The fact that he had an Austrian passport was one of the weird ones. And the amount of hard drives and DVDs, CDs, etc., storage devices that he had this content on is insane. Like I said, way more than any one person would have for themselves. I don't care who you are, how twisted you are. This collection of sick crap is his warehouse of material for his real clients. Now, when Epstein died, he left behind a lot of money. His financial dealings didn't stop. Instead, his known estate, valued at around $600 million at the time, continued to operate under the management of his appointed executors, lawyer Darren Endyke and accountant Richard Kahn. The Epstein Victims Compensation Program was established after Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019 to provide financial compensation to survivors of his sexual abuse. And remember, the most recent number is over 2,000 victims. Funded by Epstein's estate, the program aimed to offer a confidential, independent, and faster alternative to lengthy civil litigation for victims seeking justice and restitution. This was the out-of-court settlements created into a program to keep people quiet. That's all it was. And to shoot off some money even to the people who were lying, just to get them to shut up. But like I already said, these out-of-court settlements for things like this, for serious charges like this, should not be allowed. The program was run independently by Jordana Feldman, an experienced claims administrator who previously worked on the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund. The program received approximately 225 applicants from alleged victims, nearly double initial expectations, but a tenth of the reality. About 150 claimants were deemed eligible, and over 92% of those 150 accepted the compensation offers. In total, more than $121 million was paid out to survivors, with individual awards ranging from thousands to millions of dollars, depending on the specifics of each case. They claimed to have given out most of his estate, but it was only about 20%, with still almost $500 million left. Survivors who accepted compensation were required to sign broad releases, barring them from bringing future lawsuits against the Epstein estate or any of his associates, including Ghislaine Maxwell. And then this program concluded in 2021. So the main point of this initial video, I'll try to do some deeper digging, but the main point of this initial video is that there is 100%, no doubt about it, more people involved than Epstein and Maxwell in this operation, in these crimes. And the government seems to want to just shut it down, use the scapegoat plan, and let everyone else walk free, and let these things continue. And it's just not right.